Hi everyone, I'm back again. Sorry if I look a bit of a mess. I'm very, very tired. It's been a really hellish week this week at work and such. So yeah, I'm rather tired this weekend. So yeah, forgive if I look a mess. But anyway, let's get on to what I'm here to talk about. And what I'm talking about is my thoughts on having reread The Six Wives of Henry VIII by Antonia Fraser. Fraser. Not Fraser. Sorry, very tired. I really love Antonia Fraser. She is one of my favourite historians. She has written so many books since she started writing biographies and such since the early 1960s. So she's been around for a while, and she's done so many. It's ridiculous. So whenever I go into bookstores wherever and it's a history section, they always have at least one of her books. So I really strongly recommend that you read any of her books, regardless on who is covering. But this one especially, really, really, really recommend. Now, of course, I'm sure you all know the story of Henry VIII and his six wives, but in case you don't, there was here in England, in the time of the Tudors, there was a king called King Henry VIII, and he was probably most well remembered because of his six wives, who, as the rhyme goes, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. And the whole of his reign was shaped around these six women, and they're so intriguing characters. For who they are. So you had Catherine of Aragon, the wife who was married to him for over 20 years, the loyal wife who couldn't bear him a son. Then came Anne Boleyn, who swept him off his feet and became known as like the harlot. She was the mistress, who, because of how Henry couldn't annul his marriage because of various situations, it's rather complicated. Because of that, he broke away from the Catholic Church, established the Church of England, made himself the head of it, and therefore that meant, because it was a new religion, he was able to marry Anne Boleyn and get rid of Catherine of Aragon, who she promised to give him her son. She didn't. She lost her head. Jane Seymour, who came along, she was the beautiful innocence of what could have been. She gave Henry the son and died in the process. And he really did love Jane, but she didn't live that long. Then came Anne of Cleves, the marriage that his men, his Privy Council, and that said, you should marry someone else. And when he met her, he thought she was really ugly, and annulled the marriage very quickly. Well, he was forced into marriage and then annulled it. Catherine Howard, the slut, the whore, the 15-year-old girl who married, who's thought to be 15 because we don't actually know when the year that she was born, who married Henry when he was in his late 40s, early 50s, and found somebody else caught her eye in his council and lost her head for it. And then finally Catherine Parr, the nurse, who nursed him through the last part of his life and outlived him. So she survived, but barely. And when I say barely, I mean it's like if he hadn't been ill, she would have been beheaded for scandalous stuff that she wrote, that she had published in a book. So this book chronicles the lives of those women, and I really love Antonia Fraser for the way that she wrote this book. It's only it looks very thick, but that's because it's got so much annexes and such in it. It's only about 520 pages or something in total, so not really that long. It's taken me a while to read it though, because work's been hell and I've been writing and all such, but that's something else. But what I love about this is that she doesn't focus on Henry. She only refers to Henry when needs be because of his, lusting after them, or, how with Anne Boleyn breaking from the church and all that lot, and his issues with Anne of Cleves because she was ugly and all that lot. Yet they remained really good friends, and she outlived all of the wives and Henry and for a rather long time. and was the most respected out of the all the wives in the end by the people. But yeah, she only ever refers to him when she needs to. Her focus is entirely on these women. And I really love the fact that she's a female author writing about women, and she respects them as women first before these famous figures in history, and she explores them, not the stereotype of of what we see. So, for example, you have Anne Boleyn. She was the mistress. She was the harlot. She came along and stole the king, and she was ruthless, and she would do anything to get what she wanted and all that lot. But really, she wasn't. She was calculated, yes, and she made a miscalculation, and that was and that caused her downfall. But she wasn't to the degree that she murder someone or something just to become queen. It wasn't like that. She had a bold character and a wit that shone in the court, and that is what attracted her to Henry. But she did, unfortunately, she miscalculated and overstepped the mark, and lost her life for it. And the same with Anne of Cleves. She is known as the ugly one. And it's like, oh yeah, she was ugly, so Henry just cast her aside and that's it. She's not worth anything. She was a great diplomat. She was a wonderful woman. And the things that she was German. She came from she came from Germany, and she brought this culture into the court, and how people reacted to her and how she reacted to them, and it really helped her in later life. And she and Henry remained really kind of close, and she would celebrate Christmases with him, and they wrote to each other, referred to each other as brother and sister throughout all of their correspondence. So it's really, really fascinating to read about these women. The one that really intrigues me is Catherine Howard. She always has, and I'll talk about something. Sorry, excuse me. Started to lose my voice. I'll talk about something from a documentary about her in a minute, that recently came out that I really, really enjoyed. But yeah, the fact that she's writing about these women and looking at them as women, not as these, parts of history, all of these documents and such, where is absolutely wonderful. Whereas you look at a male author, a male historian, because I have got David Starkey's book of The Six Wives of Henry VIII, which is like, in comparison to this, it's like that, it's massive. But he's quite cold about them. He's very far off from them. He doesn't like to look at them kind of in depth in the same manner as a female author looks at. And you can see that also if you look at another a female historian who I really love is Alison Weir. She thinks guys, come on, I'm a girl. I know I'm in the modern age, but if I'm right now, if that happened in front of me, this is what I would do, and that is what she did as well. You've got to respect her for that. Or so, something like that. They really have this connection and an understanding on a different level, I think, than a male historian would, and a new level of respect, I think, as well. But that's just my opinion on female historians looking at women in history. Now, also, Antonia Fraser is absolutely wonderful at bringing things to life. She's very, her words are very evocative and full of, they're so rich. She chooses words that are so full. She can write very short, simple sentences that give you so much information. She's so great with that. Her power of her words is fantastic. Sometimes, though, I do. I'll give her a criticism. Sometimes I do like her to cover an area in more depth, but she doesn't. So, for example, like Catherine Howard, she says about how the interrogation beginning of her and the questions are put forward, and then I want her to talk about her responses, and then she goes, and Catherine confessed. I was like, well, I'd like to actually read the confession, not just say she confessed. You know, that kind of thing. So that's my one criticism I'll give of her. I have to say, but the depth the depth that she goes to in areas, you know, all the other areas, is great. How she explores these women is wonderful. She really places you in that time. She likes to give you information about the court, especially about the area of parts of London, that what's going on, but only to a degree that you actually need to, because there's this whole, and you kind of, I'm going to say this though, so you kind of get this in like all historical non-fiction, even in dramas and such, where it's them, I'm talking about in royalty related stuff, them, and then the people are way over there. They're not going to, you know, make an impact. And this, she does kind of keep it separate, but she brings the people a lot closer to the royals, you know, in the emphasis of what is going on around here. And the Tudor dynasty was really hard, troubling times. It was a time when even the slightest thing that is said that is out of character, or you know, that's questionable, could get you executed. Your religion could get you executed. You know, the slightest thing, and you could be killed. So you had to be very careful with what was going on. And I think it's just that thing that, especially with these the 6 wives of Henry VIII, it was all about survival. And he had a furious temper, and you never knew he was going to fly off the handle. So being very temperamental, I think it would have been bloody terrifying to be married to Henry VIII, or to be in his court in general. And so you could say that some of these wives were really quite naive to try and change him, if that's the right word, or, you know, try to, because you could say change him, because of, if you look at like Jane Seymour, she was very much, because with his first 2 wives, Catherine Aragon and Anne Boleyn, they both bore him children, they both bore him girls. And when the marriages for each of them dissolved, their children were declared bastards and moved out of his home, so he didn't see them. And Jane brought them back into his life, basically, and it took a lot to get them back. And Henry, you know, would have arguments with Jane, saying it's not your place, you're not king, I'm king, yada yada, but she persisted, and it worked out in the end. So, you know, and so you could argue that you know, the whole changing Henry and everything is what they set out to do in a sense, but only some of them, I think, you can really properly say that about. Catherine Parr made a mistake, as I said, with a book. She published a couple of books. The first one was just like copies of passages from other sources and that, so it wasn't really anything. And in her second book, she basically ripped apart Henry's church and said, don't go there, and didn't think that might get her into trouble. But yeah, but if he hadn't been so ill, then he would have had her executed for it. So, you know, she barely got out there alive. But I think, yeah, they were so bold characters. They were completely individual. They saw the world in completely different ways. And yeah, how they got through what they did, even though some of them obviously ended very tragically, is a miracle. You know, is a wonder that they got through it all. So I can only love and respect all of them. I especially have a great love for Catherine of Aragon. I think she was so interesting, and she was such a powerhouse of bravery and and she was a soldier, basically. She fought battles when Henry was away. She commanded armies. She, kept the kingdom going. She went through having 6 children and 5 of them die. She had to deal with everything under the sun. And before she married Henry, she was married to Henry's older brother, Arthur, who died 5 months after they married. She left her family when she was 15, I think it was 15 or 16, to come to England to marry Arthur, and she never saw her family ever again. When Henry dissolved their marriage, her daughter Mary was taken off of her, and she never saw her again. Yet she still was this powerhouse. It's so tragic. Catherine of Aragon, it's unbelievable what she went through, and she survived all of that. It's just, oh my God, I couldn't have done that. So I can only marvel at the woman. She's amazing. But anyway, Antonia Fraser. I really strongly recommend this book. I've read it before, and it's so readable. It's so engrossing. A really beautifully constructed piece of work. This book. I strongly recommend it. And if you're intrigued by the story of Henry VIII and his 6 wives, grab a copy. Okay, so the adaptations and such of their lives and such, you can go to the various places. Now I've got a few things here. Sorry, I got them by my side and they're just falling off the sofa. First of all, you've got, of course, the HBO series The Tudors. Now these are good. I have to say, I love the TV series The Tudors, but the actual historical events and this TV series are in 2 separate places in my mind. Not that because they got all dates wrong and all that, because they didn't. They got it right. It's just some things that it's like, yeah, the Tudors I don't think would necessarily say that or necessarily do that or wear that. That kind of niggly little stuff. But I still really thoroughly love this. There are a lot of historians, Tudor historians, who hate this show because it's like, oh no, the Tudors wouldn't have sex like that, they wouldn't do all that. But it's like, yeah, but it's a bit of entertainment at the same time, so you're gonna have that stuff in it, so don't worry about it. That's how I feel. But yeah, recommend them. Now, another drama, which I forgot to say, this series, The Tudors, I think really does depict the wives very well. Catherine Howard at times I'm a bit like, yeah, just a bit, but not, too greatly off. Because with Catherine Howard, she was a very intriguing character, but I'm going to get back to her in a second. So the other drama that I really like, but lots of people kind of don't, but I really do like it, is Henry VIII with Ray Winston and Helena Bonham Carter playing Anne Boleyn. There she is. And Emilia Fox plays Jane Seymour. And Emily Blunt is actually in this, playing Catherine Howard. I really do like this. I think it was an intriguing piece. It doesn't necessarily depict the wives exactly as history depicts it, but it follows the stereotypes, that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, of the wives and how they acted and such. But it doesn't really, follow them as individuals. So Anne Boleyn is absolutely ruthless in this, ruthless as hell to get what she wants. Jane Seymour is, the little wilt flower. You have Anne of Cleves, who just literally pops up, says hello, and then disappears. Catherine Howard is just, she loves having sex with anybody, and you see her having sex when we first meet her with some random guy. So she is the whore and all that lot. So, that just shows you it is very, very stereotypical of what history has depicted these women as. Now, when it comes to documentaries, this is where I have these that I really like, but they're so different in their own unique ways. So the first one is David Starkey's The Six Wives of Henry VIII. As I said, he's good. I like it. I like his and I like his stuff, but now it's of its time kind of thing, even though it was like sort of late 90s, early 2000s, because female historians have really taken off, especially in the UK, of late. And the way that he presents it is very quite dry and factual. He doesn't like to explore, he doesn't really explore them as women. He just says, this is what documents tell us, so I'm going to tell you what the documents say. You know, that's the way he is. So yeah, I do recommend this, but be aware it's quite dry. As you can see, they've got actors dressed up as them and such, but they don't actually, like do like drama related scenes and such. But yeah, that's good. Now the two that I bought most recently, and I literally bought them like a couple of weeks ago, are these two. Now the first one is Henry VIII and His Six Wives, that Channel 5 did, but weirdly BBC made a DVD, with Susanna Lipscomb and Dan Jones. Now, Susanna Lipscomb, I love her. She's a fantastic historian. She does a lot of, she's done a lot of home-related, like, documentaries. Like, there's this whole thing that she's done, these series called Killers in the Home, and each kind of few episodes have related to a different period. So she's done like the Tudor home, the Georgian home, Victorian home, etc., and all of these items that that killed lots of people, and I found that really interesting. Things like your clothes or the wallpaper or a milk bottle or something, some random stuff like that. But what I love about this this documentary, shall I say it technically, is because of the drama element, because it's also acted out. There's full dramatic scenes that are played out. And what is great is that Susanna and Dan, there they are, Susanna's there and Dan. So what they do is that they tell their story, but they look at the entire picture, but they do look at the individual women a little more in depth. And Dan looks at the situation from Henry's point of view, and Susanna looks at the situation from the women's point of view. She is more prominent in this than Dan is, but it's very interesting seeing the two sides and how they play together and everything. It's well constructed. The dramatization of the scenes, especially when they're reenacting the court scenes, and it's word for word exactly what was recorded as people have said and everything. So it's bang on. I really do enjoy this. It's 3 hours long, this one. And the other one, which is where I'm going to bring in the Catherine Howard element, this was aired last year on Channel 5, right after last year the BBC aired their version, which is called Six Wives, by my favourite female historian, Lucy Worsley. I've met her a few times at the Cheltenham Literature Festival. She's a really lovely lady, great historian, and there she is right there. And Lucy Worsley, she's done I think there's probably like a 5th or 6th series or something that she's done for the BBC. Mainly she does BBC4, but this was BBC 1, I think, or 2. And this is again a docudrama, but what is great is that Lucy, she dresses up throughout this, and there's loads of sections that are acted out and everything, but she is a servant in the scene, so she's watching it going on, and then you'll see her turn a corner and then she's suddenly in her modern robe and she's talking to the camera, or she's going off places and meeting people. Then she turns a corner and she's back in a Tudor wear, and she's back watching scenes again. It's really effective way of bringing the story to life. It's fantastic, but she especially focuses, and I love this about this series in particular, what I was saying about with Antonia Fraser kind of does, but not quite in depth, because this one really does go in depth, is that she looks at the entire story from the women's point of view. She delves really quite in depth to each individual woman and breaks the stereotype and says, look, this is not the picture at all. And so, for example, like with Anne of Cleves, the ugly one, if you actually look at it, she wasn't ugly. She was just, in Henry's point of view, she was, because when he turned up to meet her for the first time, he had this thing that he liked to dress up and pretend he wasn't the king and then go, ah, surprise, it's me, kind of thing. But when she was brought over from Germany, she wasn't told this. She was taught all about like English food and the ways in which they've, prayed and all this lot, and meals at times, that kind of thing. She learned all about the English culture, but she was never told this, that Henry did this. And Henry burst into a room dressed up as, just a normal peasant and presented himself to her, and she had absolutely no idea who he was, and she demanded that he'd leave the room. And it's one of her ladies in waiting, when it's the king, had to tell her, and he was so angry about this, and he said, yeah, get her out of here, I don't want her. So it wasn't necessarily this story of how he saw her, said that she was ugly, and therefore decided to get rid of her. It was she kind of dented his pride, kind of thing. She annoyed him, and it was just a thing that, because she wasn't told, and she was a great diplomat, but especially she looks at Catherine Howard, really focuses on Catherine, and there is this whole thing about how there was a man called Francis Derham who she had slept with before she became queen, and this was part of her confession. But if you actually break the confession down, what she says is that she says, yes, I slept with him, but it was not my choice. And those words, when you read on with the rest of it, she's basically saying that she was raped by this man, and nobody, but because of that time, she would have been of marrying age. It didn't matter. It was classed as, sex constitution on that. But now, looking at it from our perspective, we go, hang on, no, that's rape. That's statutory rape that happened. But at that time, it didn't matter. So this girl, who was probably about 15 when she became queen, was raped by this man, who was then seduced by a man in the courts who clearly was very calculated, and I think it's fair to say, Culpeper, who was her lover, he pressed on her for the affair to happen, and then she got beheaded for it. It's so interesting when you get that full dialogue when she says, the actress who plays Catherine, there she is, who actually says the full text and everything that of her confession, and actually hear it and have somebody say it, you go, oh God, this is totally wrong. But because of that time, it didn't matter. It was classed as consensual, sorry. And so she got executed for it. And it's so tragic. But this is my favourite at the moment, alongside this one, for the way it depicts the six wives. But this one stands just in front, I have to say. And it portrays all of these women for who they were, and especially doesn't portray Anne Boleyn as this ruthless woman who would do anything to be queen. And I have to respect and love Lucy Blizzy for that. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop there. So that was what I thought of Antonia Fraser's Six Wives of Henry VIII. Strongly recommend it. If you're able to get hold of a copy, then do. And as I said, with all of these adaptations and documentaries and all that lot, if you're able to get hold of any of these as well, then do. But I really strongly recommend these two for you to check out. And I'll be back soon with my thoughts, not my thoughts, my announcement of what I'm going to be reading next, which will be from the fiction Jar of Randomness. And I'll be back soon. And if you want to leave me any comments or give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this video, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide, and I will see you guys later. Right then, guys, bye.